Yeah, 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 by Jack London. He was a whiskey-guzzling Scotchman, and he downed his whiskey neat, beginning with his first tot punctually at 6 in the morning, and thereafter repeating it at regular intervals throughout the day till bedtime, which was usually midnight. He slept but 5 hours out of the 24, and for the remaining 19 hours he was quietly and decently drunk. During the 8 weeks I spent with him on Oolong Atoll, I never saw him draw a sober breath. In fact, his sleep was so short that he never had time to sober up. It was the most beautiful and orderly perennial drunk I have ever observed. McAllister was his name. He was an old man and very shaky on his pins. His hand trembled as with a palsy, especially noticeable when he poured his whiskey, though I never knew him to spill a drop. He had been 28 years in Melanesia, ranging from German New Guinea to the German Solomons, and so thoroughly had he become identified with that portion of the world, that he habitually spoke in that bastard lingo called bec-de-mer. Thus, in conversation with me, sun he come up meant sunrise, kai he stop meant that dinner was served, and belly belong me walkabout meant that he was sick at his stomach. He was a small man, and a withered one, burned inside and outside by ardent spirits and ardent sun. He was a cinder, a bit of a clinker of a man, a little animated clinker, not yet quite cold, that moved stiffly and by starts and jerks like an automaton. A gust of wind would have blown him away. He weighed 90 pounds. But the immense thing about him was the power with which he ruled. Oolong Atoll was 140 miles in circumference. One steered by compass course in its lagoon. It was populated by 5,000 Polynesians, all strapping men and women, many of them standing 6 feet in height and weighing a couple of 100 pounds. Oolong was 250 miles from the nearest land. Twice a year a little schooner called to collect copra. The one white man on Oolong was McAllister, petty trader and unintermittent guzzler, and he ruled Oolong and its 6,000 savages with an iron hand. He said come and they came, go and they went. They never questioned his will nor judgment. He was cantankerous as only an aged Scotchman can be, and interfered continually in their personal affairs. When Nugu, the king's daughter, wanted to marry Hano from the other end of the atoll, her father said yes, but McAllister said no, and the marriage never came off. When the king wanted to buy a certain islet in the lagoon from the chief priest, McAllister said no. The king was in debt to the company to the tune of 180,000 coconuts, and until that was paid he was not to spend a single coconut on anything else. And yet the king and his people did not love McAllister. In truth, they hated him horribly, and to my knowledge the whole population, with the priests at the head, tried vainly for 3 months to pray him to death. The devils they sent after him were awe-inspiring, but since McAllister did not believe in devils, they were without power over him. With drunken Scotchmen all signs fail. They gathered up scraps of food which had touched his lips, an empty whiskey bottle, a coconut from which he had drunk, and even his spittle, and performed all kinds of deviltries over them. But McAllister lived on. His health was superb. He never caught fever, nor coughs nor colds. Dysentery passed him by, and the malignant ulcers and vile skin diseases that attack blacks and whites alike in that climate never fastened upon him. He must have been so saturated with alcohol as to defy the lodgment of germs. I used to imagine them falling to the ground in showers of microscopic cinders as fast as they entered his whiskey-sodden aura. No one loved him, not even germs, while he loved only whiskey, and still he lived. I was puzzled. I could not understand 6,000 natives putting up with that withered shrimp of a tyrant. It was a miracle that he had not died suddenly long since. Unlike the cowardly Melanesians, the people were high-stomached and warlike. In the big graveyard, at head and feet of the graves, were relics of past sanguinary history: blubber spades, rusty old bayonets and cutlasses, copper bolts, rudder irons, harpoons, bomb guns, bricks that could have come from nowhere but a whaler's trying out furnace, and old brass pieces of the 16th century that verified the traditions of the early Spanish navigators. Ship after ship had come to grief on Oolong. Not 30 years before, the whaler Blenheردale, running into the lagoon for repair, had been cut off with all hands. In similar fashion had the crew of the Gasket, a sandalwood trader, perished. There was a big French bark, the Toulon, becalmed off the atoll, which the islanders boarded after a sharp tussle and wrecked in the Lipaw Passage, the captain and a handful of sailors escaping in the longboat. Then there were the Spanish pieces, which told of the loss of one of the early explorers. All this, of the vessels named, is a matter of history, and is to be found in the South Pacific Sailing Directory, but that there was other history unwritten I was yet to learn. In the meantime I puzzled why 6,000 primitive savages let one degenerate Scotch despot live. One hot afternoon McAllister and I sat on the veranda looking out over the lagoon, with all its wonder of jeweled colors. At our backs, across the 100 yards of palm-studded sand, the outer surf roared on the reef. It was dreadfully warm. We were in 4 degrees south latitude and the sun was directly overhead, having crossed the line a few days before on its journey south. There was no wind, not even a catspaw. The season of the southeast trade was drawing to an early close, and the northwest monsoon had not yet begun to blow. "They can't dance worth a damn," said McAllister. I had happened to mention that the Polynesian dances were superior to the Papuan, and this McAllister had denied, for no other reason than his cantankerousness. But it was too not to argue, and I said nothing. Besides, I had never seen the Oolong people dance. "I'll prove it to you," he announced, beckoning to the black New Hanover boy, a labor recruit, who served as cook and general house servant. "Hey you boy, you tell him one fella king come along me." The boy departed, and back came the Prime Minister, perturbed, ill at ease, and garrulous with apologetic explanation. In short, the king slept and was not to be disturbed. "King he plenty strong fella sleep," was his final sentence. McAllister was in such a rage that the Prime Minister incontinently fled, to return with the king himself. They were a magnificent pair, the king especially, who must have been all of 6 feet 3 inches in height. His features had the eagle-like quality that is so frequently found in those of the North American Indian. He had been molded and born to rule. His eyes flashed as he listened, but right meekly he obeyed McAllister's command to fetch a couple of hundred of the best dancers, male and female, in the village. And dance they did, for 2 mortal hours under that broiling sun. They did not love him for it, and little he cared, in the end dismissing them with abuse and sneers. The abject servility of those magnificent savages was terrifying. How could it be? What was the secret of his rule? More and more I puzzled as the days went by, and though I observed perpetual examples of his undisputed sovereignty, never a clue was there as to how it was. One day I happened to speak of my disappointment in failing to trade for a beautiful pair of orange cowries. The pair was worth £5 in Sydney if it was worth a cent. I had offered 200 sticks of tobacco to the owner, who had held out for 300. When I casually mentioned the situation, McAllister immediately sent for the man, took the shells from him, and turned them over to me. 50 sticks were all he permitted me to pay for them. The man accepted the tobacco and seemed overjoyed at getting off so easily. As for me, I resolved to keep a bridle on my tongue in the future. And still I mulled over the secret of McAllister's power. I even went to the extent of asking him directly, but all he did was to cock one eye, look wise, and take another drink. One night I was out fishing in the lagoon with Odie, the man who had been mulcted of the cowries. Privily, I had made up to him an additional 150 sticks, and he had come to regard me with a respect that was almost veneration, which was curious, seeing that he was an old man, twice my age at least. "What name you fella Kanaka, all the same pickaninny?" I began on him. "This fella trader he one fella. You fella Kanaka plenty fella too much. You fella Kanaka just like him dog plenty fright along that fella trader. He no eat you fella. He no get him teeth along him. What name you too much fright? S'pose plenty fella Kanaka kill him?" he asked. "He die," I retorted. "You fella Kanaka kill him plenty fella white man long time before. What name you fright this fella white man?" "Yes, we kill him plenty," was his answer. "My word. Any amount. Long time before. One time me young fella too much, one big fella ship he stop outside. Wind he no blow. Plenty fella Kanaka we get him canoe, plenty fella canoe. We go catch him that fella ship. My word we catch him big fella fight. 2-3 white men shoot like hell. We no fright. We come alongside, we go upside, plenty fella. Maybe I think 50 10 500. One fella white marry woman belong that fella ship. Never before I see 'em white marry. By plenty white man finish. One fella skipper he no die. 5 fella 6 fella white man no die. Skipper he sing out. Some fella white man he fight. Some fella white man he lower away boat. After that, all together over the side they go. Skipper he sling white Mary down. After that they washy row strong fella plenty too much. Father belong me that time he strong fella. He throw him one fella spear. That fella spear he go in one side that white Mary. He no stop. My word he go out other side that fella Mary. She finish. Me no fright. Plenty Kanaka too much no fright. Old Odie's pride had been touched, for he suddenly stripped down his lava and showed me the unmistakable scar of a bullet. Before I could speak, his line ran out suddenly. He checked it and attempted to haul in, but found that the fish had run around a coral branch. Casting a look of reproach at me for having beguiled him from his watchfulness, he went over the side, feet first, turning over after he got under and following his line down to bottom. The water was 10 fathoms. I leaned over and watched the play of his feet, growing dim and dimmer, as they stirred the wan phosphorescence into ghostly fires. 10 fathoms 60 feet, it was nothing to him, an old man, compared with the value of a hook and line. After what seemed 5 minutes, though it could not have been more than a minute, I saw him flaming whitely upward. He broke surface and dropped a 10-pound rock cod into the canoe, the line and hook intact, the latter still fast in the fish's mouth. It may be, I said remorselessly. You no fright long ago. You plenty fright now along that fella trader. Yes, plenty fright, he confessed, with an air of dismissing the subject. For half an hour we pulled up our lines and flung them out in silence. Then small fish sharks began to bite, and after losing a hook apiece, we hauled in and waited for the sharks to go their way. I speak you true, Odie broke into speech. Then you sav we fright now. I lighted up my pipe and waited, and the story that Odie told me in atrocious Becdemer I here turn into proper English. Otherwise, in spirit and order of narrative, the tale is as it fell from Odie's lips. It was after that we were very proud. We had fought many times with the strange white men who live upon the sea, and always we had beaten them. A few of us were killed, but what was that compared with the stores of wealth of 1,000 kinds that we found on the ships? And then one day, maybe 20 years ago or 25, there came a schooner right through the passage and into the lagoon. It was a large schooner with 3 masts. She had 5 white men and maybe 40 boats' crew, black fellows from New Guinea and New Britain, and she had come to fish bêche de mer. She lay at anchor across the lagoon from here at Paulu, and her boats scattered out everywhere, making camps on the beaches where they cured the bêche de mer. This made them weak by dividing them, for those who fished here and those on the schooner at Paulu were 50 miles apart, and there were others farther away still. Our king and headman held council, and I was one in the canoe that paddled all afternoon and all night across the lagoon, bringing word to the people of Paulu that in the morning we would attack the fishing camps at the one time, and that it was for them to take the schooner. We who brought the word were tired with the paddling, but we took part in the attack. On the schooner were 2 white men, the skipper and the second mate, with 6 black boys. The skipper with 3 boys we caught on shore and killed, but first 8 of us the skipper killed with his 2 revolvers. We fought close together, you see, at hand grapples. The noise of our fighting told the mate what was happening, and he put food and water and a sail in the small dinghy, which was so small that it was no more than 12 feet long. We came down upon the schooner, 1,000 men, covering the lagoon with our canoes. Also, we were blowing conch shells, singing war songs, and striking the sides of the canoes with our paddles. What chance had 1 white man and 3 black boys against us? No chance at all, and the mate knew it. White men are hell. I have watched them much, and I am an old man now, and I understand at last why the white men have taken to themselves all the islands in the sea. It is because they are hell. Here are you in the canoe with me. You are hardly more than a boy. You are not wise, for each day I tell you many things you do not know. When I was a little pickaninny, I knew more about fish and the ways of fish than you know now. I am an old man, but I swim down to the bottom of the lagoon, and you cannot follow me. What are you good for, anyway? I do not know except to fight. I have never seen you fight. Yet I know that you are like your brothers and that you will fight like hell. Also, you are a fool like your brothers. You do not know when you are beaten. You will fight until you die, and then it will be too late to know that you are beaten. Now behold what this mate did. As we came down upon him, covering the sea and blowing our conches, he put off from the schooner in the small boat, along with the 3 black boys, and rowed for the passage. There again he was a fool, for no wise man would put out to sea in so small a boat. The sides of it were not 4 inches above the water. 20 canoes went after him, filled with 200 young men. We paddled 5 fathoms while his black boys were rowing 1 fathom. He had no chance, but he was a fool. He stood up in the boat with a rifle, and he shot many times. He was not a good shot, but as we drew close many of us were wounded and killed. But still he had no chance. I remember that all the time he was smoking a cigar. When we were 40 feet away and coming fast, he dropped the rifle, lighted a stick of dynamite with the cigar, and threw it at us. He lighted another and threw them at us very rapidly, many of them. I know now that he must have split the ends of the fuses and stuck in match heads, because they lighted so quickly. Also, the fuses were very short. Sometimes the dynamite sticks went off in the air, but most of them went off in the canoes. And each time they went off in a canoe, that canoe was finished. Of the 20 canoes, the half were smashed to pieces. The canoe I was in was so smashed, and likewise the 2 men who sat next to me. The dynamite fell between them. The other canoes turned and ran away. Then that mate yelled, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," at us. Also he went at us again with his rifle, so that many were killed through the back as they fled away. And all the time the black boys in the boat went on rowing. You see, I told you true that mate was hell. Nor was that all. Before he left the schooner, he set her on fire, and fixed up all the powder and dynamite so that it would go off at one time. There were hundreds of us on board, trying to put out the fire, heaving up water from overside, when the schooner blew up, so that all we had fought for was lost to us, besides many more of us being killed. Sometimes, even now, in my old age, I have bad dreams in which I hear that mate yell, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." In a voice of thunder he yells, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." But all those in the fishing camps were killed. The mate went out of the passage in his little boat, and that was the end of him, we made sure, for how could so small a boat, with 4 men in it, live on the ocean? A month went by, and then one morning between 2 rain squalls, a schooner sailed in through our passage and dropped anchor before the village. The king and the headman made big talk, and it was agreed that we would take the schooner in 2 or 3 days. In the meantime, as it was our custom always to appear friendly, we went off to her in canoes, bringing strings of coconuts, fowls, and pigs to trade. But when we were alongside, many canoes of us, the men on board began to shoot us with rifles, and as we paddled away I saw the mate who had gone to sea in the little boat spring upon the rail and dance and yell, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." That afternoon they landed from the schooner in 3 small boats filled with white men. They went right through the village, shooting every man they saw. Also they shot the fowls and pigs. We who were not killed got away in canoes and paddled out into the lagoon. Looking back, we could see all the houses on fire. Late in the afternoon we saw many canoes coming from Nihi, which is the village near the Nihi Passage in the northeast. They were all that were left, and like us their village had been burned by a second schooner that had come through Nihi Passage. We stood on in the darkness to the westward for Paulu, but in the middle of the night we heard women wailing, and then we ran into a big fleet of canoes. They were all that were left of Paulu, which likewise was in ashes, for a third schooner had come in through the Paulu Passage. You see, that mate with his black boys had not been drowned. He had made the Solomon Islands, and there told his brothers of what we had done in Oolong. And all his brothers had said they would come and punish us, and there they were in the 3 schooners, and our 3 villages were wiped out. And what was there for us to do? In the morning the 2 schooners from windward sailed down upon us in the middle of the lagoon. The trade wind was blowing fresh, and by scores of canoes they ran us down, and the rifles never ceased talking. We scattered like flying fish before the bonita, and there were so many of us that we escaped by thousands, this way and that, to the islands on the rim of the atoll. And thereafter the schooners hunted us up and down the lagoon. In the nighttime we slipped past them. But the next day, or in 2 days or 3 days, the schooners would be coming back, hunting us toward the other end of the lagoon. And so it went. We no longer counted nor remembered our dead. True, we were many and they were few. But what could we do? I was in one of the 20 canoes filled with men who were not afraid to die. We attacked the smallest schooner. They shot us down in heaps. They threw dynamite into the canoes, and when the dynamite gave out, they threw hot water down upon us. And the rifles never ceased talking. And those whose canoes were smashed were shot as they swam away. And the mate danced up and down upon the cabin top and yelled, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Every house on every smallest island was burned. Not a pig nor a fowl was left alive. Our wells were defiled with the bodies of the slain, or else heaped high with coral rock. We were 25,000 on Oolong before the 3 schooners came. Today we are 5,000. After the schooners left, we were but 3,000, as you shall see. At last the 3 schooners grew tired of chasing us back and forth. So they went, the 3 of them, to Nihi in the northeast. And then they drove us steadily to the west. Their 9 boats were in the water as well. They beat up every island as they moved along. They drove us day by day. And every night the 3 schooners and the 9 boats made a chain of watchfulness that stretched across the lagoon from rim to rim, so that we could not escape back. They could not drive us forever that way, for the lagoon was only so large, and at last all of us that yet lived were driven upon the last sand bank to the west. Beyond lay the open sea. There were 10,000 of us, and we covered the sand bank from the lagoon edge to the pounding surf on the other side. No one could lie down. There was no room. We stood hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder. 2 days they kept us there, and the mate would climb up in the rigging to mock us and yell, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," till we were well sorry that we had ever harmed him or his schooner a month before. We had no food, and we stood on our feet 2 days and nights. The little babies died, and the old and weak died, and the wounded died. And worst of all, we had no water to quench our thirst, and for 2 days the sun beat down on us and there was no shade. Many men and women waded out into the ocean and were drowned, the surf casting their bodies back on the beach. And there came a pest of flies. Some men swam to the sides of the schooners, but they were shot to the last one. And we that lived were very sorry that in our pride we tried to take the schooner with the 3 masts that came to fish for demeanor. On the morning of the 3rd day came the skippers of the 3 schooners and that mate in a small boat. They carried rifles, all of them, and revolvers, and they made talk. It was only that they were weary of killing us that they had stopped, they told us. And we told them that we were sorry, that never again would we harm a white man, and in token of our submission we poured sand upon our heads. And all the women and children set up a great wailing for water, so that for some time no man could make himself heard. Then we were told our punishment. We must fill the 3 schooners with copra and demeanor. And we agreed, for we wanted water and our hearts were broken, and we knew that we were children at fighting when we fought with white men who fight like hell. And when all the talk was finished, the mate stood up and mocked us and yelled, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." After that we paddled away in our canoes and sought water. And for weeks we toiled at catching demeanor and curing it, in gathering the coconuts and turning them into copra. By day and night the smoke rose in clouds from all the beaches of all the islands of Oolong as we paid the penalty of our wrongdoing. For in those days of death it was burned clearly on all our brains that it was very wrong to harm a white man. By and by, the schooners full of copra and demeanor and our trees empty of coconuts, the 3 skippers and that mate called us all together for a big talk. And they said they were very glad that we had learned our lesson, and we said for the 10,000th time that we were sorry, and that we would not do it again. Also we poured sand upon our heads. Then the skippers said that it was all very well, but just to show us that they did not forget us, they would send a devil that we would never forget, and that we would always remember any time we might feel like harming a white man. After that the mate mocked us one more time and yelled, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Then 6 of our men, whom we thought long dead, were put ashore from one of the schooners, and the schooners hoisted their sails and ran out through the passage for the Solomons. The 6 men who were put ashore were the first to catch the devil the skippers sent back after us. A great sickness came, I interrupted, for I recognized the trick. The schooner had had measles on board, and the 6 prisoners had been deliberately exposed to it. Yes, a great sickness, Odie went on. It was a powerful devil. The oldest man had never heard of the like. Those of our priests that yet lived we killed because they could not overcome the devil. The sickness spread. I have said that there were 10,000 of us that stood hip to hip and shoulder to shoulder on the sandbank. When the sickness left us, there were 3,000 yet alive. Also, having made all our coconuts into copra, there was a famine. That fella traitor, Odie concluded. He like him that much dirt. He like him clam he die kai meat. He stop stink him any amount. He like him one fella dog. One sick fella dog plenty fleas stop along him. We no fright along that fella traitor. We fright because he white man. We sav plenty too much no good kill white man. That one fella sick dog traitor he plenty brother stop along him. White men like him you fight like hell. We no fright that damn traitor. Sometime he made Kanaka plenty cross along him and Kanaka want him kill em. Kanaka he think devil and Kanaka he hear that fella mate sing out, yeah. And Kanaka no kill em. Odie baited his hook with a piece of squid, which he tore with his teeth from the live and squirming monster, and hook and bait sank in white flames to the bottom. Shark walkabout he finish, he said. I think we catch him plenty fella fish. His line jerked savagely. He pulled it in rapidly, hand under hand, and landed a big gasping rock cod in the bottom of the canoe. Son he come up, I make him that damn fella traitor one present big fella fish, said Odie.